The hashtag Fees Must Fall campaign certainly drew its strength from social media. It's become the most tweeted about event in South African history over a 3-day period. Protesters gave their own accounts via tweets, photos and video, all in real time. Yavi Madurai, social media analyst and managing director at Black Box Theory, is joining us now in the studio to unpack these numbers for us. Yavi, good morning and thank you very much.
Morning.
A lot of activity over this hashtag Fees Must Fall campaign that we saw on social media. What are the numbers telling you?
Well, if you look at a full analysis, if we look at the specific 3 days, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, hashtag Fees Must Fall, over 700,000 tweets alone, just over those 3 days. If you look a little bit further, when it started, obviously the rumblings would have started before we got to the pinnacle of it. We're talking over 866,000 tweets alone. We're not talking about Facebook analysis. We're not talking about any other social media platform. We're specifically talking just tweets, and that's on one hashtag. If we have to add in all the other hashtags, roads must fall, Wits must fall, you know, all of that, it will clear. I believe it will clear. We'll give you the stats, but I believe it'll clear in excess.
And I see over 1 month it was more than 860,000
yes.
using that hashtag
yes.
Fees Must Fall.
Yes.
If you can look, this
yes.
is currently on screen, and you can see the activity was biggest on the 22nd of October
yes.
in terms of numbers, and then 23rd, of course, was a different day, and people were at union buildings, and that's a different. What's driving this? Who's the main driver of these?
If you look at it, so instead of just looking at just, you know, the hashtags and the analysis of all of that, let's look at the understanding of who is driving this. So yes, there's Twitter, yes, there's any social media platform that you have, but remember that the soul of social media is engagement and people, connection. And they are using this platform more than any other platform to mobilize, to connect, to talk, to engage, to experience. And the fact that they are the millennial generation, majority would be 18 to 24 years old, majority, obviously there's others, but the fact that that's how they think, that is what comes close. They pick up a device and they're able to mobilize within seconds. That is what is driven.
I guess the generational thing will be driving
Absolutely.
this. I mean, I remember I was a student on 16 June 1976 in Soweto, and we had to go and gather. Each time we wanted to communicate, to say what's happening next, yes. It meant we had to gather, and that made us more vulnerable to be caught by the apartheid police.
Absolutely. Now, that's basically would have spread by word of mouth back in your day. Now, the social media technically puts word of mouth on steroids. There's only one way of putting it. It takes it to a whole other level because within seconds you can engage, mobilize and gather without having that particular.
I know you haven't looked at the other social media platforms, but I'm sure you could take a good guess and say that overall, yes. I'm sure the activity on social media
yes.
as a whole,
yes.
we saw a heightened usage by the students who are using to mobilize, as you say,
Absolutely.
to communicate and to share their experiences.
Absolutely, and good and bad. But if we have to look at the total social media analysis, I do have the stats in terms of the fact that over those 3 days, we not exactly, you know, obviously not measuring tweets and Facebooks and those kind of things, but when you look at the geographical area in which we're operating, there was a reach of 89%. Which means that over that week or that couple of days, 89%, that's all people were talking about. Remember, Oscar Pistorius got released during that time. There were other things happening as well. But that was, it was driven by who are we talking about, as in who is driving it. So obviously it's a particular generation that is focused on what was important to them at the time. So that becomes
Is this a trend we should watch out for, that as we go more and more into the future in our country, particularly with the younger generation becoming adults,
yes.
assuming roles of responsibility and accountability, both in the public and private sector, that we're going to see a change in how people connect
yes.
all the time going forward?
Yes, remember, they are going to be our future leaders in a few years, not in a few decades, in a few years. So the way they communicate now, as young as they are, and we're talking 15, 16, you know, and so on, imagine then by the time they get to their 30s, for example, when they're in leadership roles, this is all they're going to know. This is how they're going to know and understand the world. Whereas we know something different. We pick up a newspaper, we watch TV, we do those kind of things purely because that's what we knew growing up. So it's going to change.
Yeah, we still believe in a lot of face-to-face. I need to see you and talk to you. But they can just send each other some symbols and emoticons and whatever they call them, and they understand exactly what's happening. Very briefly, before you go, Yavi, I know you spoke about the whole of social media just broadly. In South Africa, most of that was driven in South Africa, the numbers that we're talking about.
Yes.
Because we did see some solidarity coming out of London, of New York, of Senegal, Cameroon, Germany.
Absolutely. So obviously, because it's being driven by South Africa, and if you look at the overall area, that, because it was, it was pieces. But I have to tell you one interesting thing. On the 24th, which was Saturday, Mashable is a social media platform, from Silicon Valley, etc., etc. I won't go into the detail. Theirs was the top tweet. So the top tweet out of all of those thousands of tweets was the top tweet for the 24th, hashtag fees have fallen. And giving a one-line description about the fact that this is what has happened and this is what the hashtag means. So that's an interesting one in terms of beyond our borders.
Yeah, social media, you go global very quickly. Thank you very much, Yavi. That's
Thank
Yavi
you.
Madurai, social media analyst and managing director at Black Box Theory. A quick break now and more news on the other side of it.